Hi friends, welcome back to my second kitchen here in beautiful Minnesota. As you can see, it is fall and it is beautiful outside. The leaves are changing and we're getting ready for the next season of life. If you're new here, I'm Susie. I'm passionate about helping people and cooking. And so on this channel, we do all things coaching and cooking. I'm a life coach who helps parents become the best versions of themselves. So today, while in Minnesota, I thought I would put together a no-knead bread. And this is something that I've made once before, but I'm gonna try this time with an added little flair. So a couple times when I've visited Minnesota, as some of you know, I come here to do some adult foster care respite. And I just love the guys that I work with here. And the couple I work for will sometimes have this delicious sourdough olive loaf of bread that they have alongside a big, large meal that they've prepared for me to help feed the gentlemen throughout the week while they're gone. And so I'm inspired today to try a version of this. It's not sourdough, but it is a no-knead bread recipe. And I'm gonna incorporate olives and some herbs this time to see if we can get this loaf to taste kind of like the one that they have ready for me when I'm here. So I'm gonna start with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna scoop a large scoop here, and then with the back of a knife, I'm going to level it out. To that, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. I have pink Himalayan salt here. And then finally, I'm gonna add 3/4 of a teaspoon of dry active yeast. So I just have the envelope kind here. Half. And 1/4. And I'm just gonna whisk these ingredients together. I'm gonna set this aside. And next I'm gonna cut up 1.5 cups or this entire jar of Kalamata olives. If your can is stuck, you can always do that little trick, and they open up much easier. So I'm gonna drain these. And now I'm just gonna dump these out onto my cutting board, and I'm just gonna cut them in half. I'm choosing to go long ways here, but you could go right down the center the opposite way as well. I'm doing nice horizontal lines across the olive long ways. These smell so good. If you don't like Kalamata olives, you can certainly leave the olives out of this. I've made this no-knead bread one time before, and it is delicious without anything added in it. But I thought, because I was inspired by the bread that they often have here, I would give this one a try and see if I'm equally obsessed with it. While I'm cutting these up, I want to take a minute to tell you that I recently was hired as an independent contractor for a company called Life and Air. And it is a The word life and air is a play on the word millionaire. So the focus of the company is to help people live abundant lives, all by focusing mostly on life instead of money. And so again, the name Life and Air is a play on the word millionaire. So instead of millions of dollars, the focus is on making a life that you are obsessed with and in love with and making it your own. Life and Air helps teach business owners and real estate investors, or really anyone that aligns with its mission, to prioritize life over money. So finding ways to make money in your business or in your life without sacrificing all of your time. And so it's being able to prioritize your life and focus on the things that are most important, like your family and your relationships, all while meeting your needs financially and living the life that you want now. If you're interested in learning more, there's an event coming up in Orlando in the beginning of November that we call the Ghetto Life Getaway. And it's a 3-day event that helps you build the vision that you want for your life. It's been attended by over 10,000 people and has changed their lives, and I know it can help yours as well. So if you're interested, I will leave the link to Life and Air website below. I am a coach for Life and Air, so if you have any questions, please feel free to comment and reach out to me, and I would be happy to help you understand it more or maybe even get you into the event. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a well now in my mixture here. That is not working. I'm gonna use a large spoon, and I'm just gonna push the flour to the side here, making a well in the middle. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of olives. I don't think we have quite 1.5 cups here. Yeah, it looks like we just have just over 1 cup, and that's fine. That will just mean that we have less spread throughout. So I'm gonna go ahead and add all of those olives into the well that we just made, along with 1.5 cups of water. And we want the water to be warm here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the microwave for just a few seconds to make sure that the water is warm. That's gonna help activate the yeast and allow the bread dough to start rising. In the microwave here, that took about 40 seconds. The water is warm, but I can still touch it. It's probably about 110 degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead and add it into the middle here with the Kalamata olives. And then I'm gonna take my large spoon here and start adding the flour mixture, which is the salt, the yeast, and the flour. And I'm just gonna give it a mix, folding the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. And I'm not gonna over mix this. I'm just gonna mix this until a nice shaggy dough appears. But make sure that all of the flour in the bowl is kind of incorporated. All right, I think that's good. I don't want to over mix it, so I'm going to call that good. And now I'm going to cover this dough with some plastic wrap. goal anyway. There we go. Give it a nice tight seal. And then I'm gonna let this dough rise, covered. I'm gonna add a tea towel on top, and then I'm just gonna leave this to rise overnight. 6 to 8 hours will do, but I'm gonna let it go ahead and rise overnight, and then tomorrow we will come back, add a couple more ingredients, and finish this up. Okay, it's the next day. Now let's take a look and see what we got. Okay, definitely the dough has risen quite a bit. Take the plastic off. You can see there's lots of bubbles in there. You can see the nice olives sprinkled throughout. So this looks really good. Okay, so I'm gonna set that aside because we're gonna need that again. So what I'm gonna do next is go ahead and grab some rosemary, and I'm gonna use dried, and I'm just gonna cut it very finely. We need about a tablespoon. So I'm just gonna eyeball it in my hands here. That looks good. Put it on my cutting board, and then I'm just gonna give this a very, very fine chop. Try not to create confetti all over the kitchen here. The reason I'm doing this is because rosemary can be pretty pungent in flavor, and so I don't necessarily care to bite into very big pieces of rosemary. I want the flavor though, so I'm trying to grind it up a little bit finer so that it can be sprinkled throughout the bread, but not give too much of an overpowering flavor. Doesn't need to be perfect, just a little bit of a rough chop, trying to find any big pieces here. All right, so that looks good to me. And now I'm gonna go ahead and put it into the bowl. The recipe that I'm using calls for shallots, but I didn't bother getting any of those. I'm just gonna go ahead and try it as I have here with just the rosemary and the olives. So I'm gonna take a piece of parchment paper here and lay it out. I'm gonna sprinkle it with a little bit of all-purpose flour. Get my hands filled with that. And then in the bowl here, I'm just gonna start by pulling the bread away from the side of the bowl and do what's called folding it inside itself. So you literally take the dough and you take it from the sides and you fold it into itself. This will incorporate the rosemary, but it will also bring this dough into a ball shape, which is what we're looking for this recipe. I'm going to turn it out onto the parchment paper. Make sure I get all that nice dough. Definitely smells like a combination of fermented dough and Kalamata olives, which smells amazing. I'll grab a little bit more flour just so that my hands don't stick to this dough. And then again, I'm just pulling and folding it into itself. Pulling and folding into itself. That flour that I put on the parchment paper is helping it to not stick. I wish I could say the same for my hands, but I will just continue to dip it in the flour. I'm not seeing any of the specks of rosemary yet. I did cut them pretty fine. Oh, now I'm starting to see them. So that's good. I definitely want that to get mixed throughout the dough. All right, a little bit more flour. Try and get some of this off my hands. Flip this back over. A little bit more. I'm being very careful. I don't want to add too much flour to this beautiful dough that's nice and hydrated, but I definitely do not want it to stick to the parchment paper. And I want to make sure that it all comes together in a nice dough ball shape. All right, so now I'm going to take it and, oh, it's still pretty sticky. All right, so I'm just going to take it and continue to kind of fold it into itself underneath. All right, I'm not gonna mess with it too much more here. I'm gonna put it in the center here and give it one final tuck. Try and get some of this excess off my fingers. This feels much more moist than the first batch that I did without the olives. So I'm wondering if the olives are adding a little bit of moisture. Okay. One more time just to make sure it's not sticking to the paper. And that it's nice and folded over. Okay. Putting a little bit extra flour on the bottom, and now just gonna make sure this is nice and formed into a ball of dough. All right, and now I'm gonna put it back in the bowl with the parchment paper. I'm gonna cover it again with the plastic wrap and put the towel over it, and I'm gonna let this rest now for another 90 minutes or so until it doubles in size. To help this along, I think I'm gonna go ahead and stick it inside the oven with the oven light on, and that should give it the right amount of heat to proof exactly where we want it in an hour and a half's time. All right, it's in the oven. I'll see you back here in about an hour and a half. Okay, the dough has been rising for actually more than 90 minutes at this point. Had a couple things to do in between, so we're going to check on it and make sure that it has in fact doubled in size. It looks beautiful. I'm going to set the oven for 450 degrees. And then I'm going to put a Dutch oven into the oven to preheat at 450 degrees for 30 minutes. I'm going to keep the lid on and let that come up to temperature, 450 degrees. Next, I'm going to take the bread right on the parchment paper and put it into the Dutch oven and cover it and bake it for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the lid from the Dutch oven and let the bread bake for an additional 15 minutes at 450 degrees. After 15 minutes, I'm going to remove the Dutch oven from the oven. And put the bread on a cooling rack. We have a nice finished dough. You can hear the sound. I let this completely cool. Okay, well, maybe not completely cool. I was a little anxious to try it. Excited, I guess I should say. And so I just cut into it. And you can see here that we have a beautiful dough with Kalamata olives sprinkled throughout and rosemary. It's nice and squishy and bounces back when I squeeze it. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a taste. Cut it in half. And then I'm gonna add some olive oil to the top of the slice of bread. This olive oil is almost out, but it was the perfect amount to add to the top to give it a taste test. And I have to tell you, this bread was absolutely delicious. The texture was perfect. It was crusty on the outside and nice and soft on the inside. This was definitely a great recipe. I'm glad that I tried this, and I hope you will too. The recipe this was inspired by will be linked in the description box. And if you want to learn how to have more time and financial freedom, I'll link Life and Air's website below. Let me know if you have any questions. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me today. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you've not already done that. I'm trying to build my channel and would greatly appreciate that. And if you know of anybody that would love this recipe, please share it with them. Thanks so much and see you next time, friends.